Hear that sound? It's not just a Harley engine. It's dealers rushing to sell slow-moving bikes. Some models that once seemed like hits are now collecting dust. That's bad news for them, but big savings for you. Stick around. These 7 Harleys are selling fast and cheap. 1. Harley-Davidson Street 500 and Street 750. These 2 bikes were smaller, lighter, and cheaper than most Harleys, which made them easier to ride and more affordable for younger people. The company hoped they would pull in a new generation of riders, especially those who had never owned a motorcycle before. At first, the idea seemed smart. The bikes were priced low, about $6,899 for the Street 500 and $7,695 for the Street 750. That made them some of the cheapest Harley-Davidsons you could buy. Both bikes had smooth, liquid-cooled engines. The Street 500 had a 494 cubic centimeter engine, while the Street 750 had a larger 749 cubic centimeter version. These engines were meant to be quiet and easy to control, making city riding less stressful. The bikes also had a low seat height, which helped beginners feel more confident. But even with these beginner-friendly features, sales fell flat. Buyers quickly noticed problems. Many owners and experts said the bikes didn't feel like true Harleys. The parts looked cheap. Some panels didn't line up right. Buttons and switches felt flimsy. Wires were exposed. It seemed like the bikes were rushed into production without the careful finish that Harley is known for. Because of that, they didn't live up to the brand's strong reputation. They looked like knockoffs, even though they were real Harleys. Other motorcycle companies didn't hold back. Bikes like the Honda Rebel or Yamaha Bolt offered smoother rides, better build quality, and lower prices. These competitors also had better dealer support and a strong history of dependability. So when new riders compared options, they often chose something other than the Street 500 or 750. The Streets weren't terrible, they just didn't stand out, and in some ways, they fell short of what customers expected from Harley. 2. Harley-Davidson Street Rod. The Street Rod was Harley's attempt to make a faster, more fun version of the Street 750. It used the same 749 cubic centimeter engine, but tuned it for more power, about 18% more horsepower and 8% more torque. This gave the Street Rod quicker acceleration and a stronger feel when riding. It also had better brakes, upgraded suspension, sportier tires, and a more aggressive look. It was made for riders who wanted more edge from their Harley experience and cost about $8,699. On paper, it looked like a smart upgrade. The front end got big 43mm inverted forks, and the rear had improved suspension for better handling. There were also drag-style handlebars, bar-end mirrors, and a seat that pushed riders into a more forward-leaning position for sporty control. It even had 17-inch Michelin tires for extra grip in corners. But in real-world riding, it wasn't as great as it sounded. The riding position felt cramped, especially for taller people. The foot pegs were set back and the bars were low, forcing many riders into an uncomfortable posture. The seat was also hard and didn't give enough support for longer rides. These small issues added up, especially for anyone using it beyond quick city trips. The styling also confused buyers. The Street Rod had blacked-out parts and bold colors, but it didn't fully match the old-school Harley look or modern sport bike design. It seemed stuck between 2 worlds. Some buyers felt it tried too hard to be edgy without fully committing to either the cruiser or sport bike vibe. And when compared to bikes like the Yamaha MT-07 or Kawasaki Z650, which had sharper handling and better value, the Street Rod started to fall behind. 3. Harley-Davidson Dyna Switchback. The Harley-Davidson Dyna Switchback sounded like a smart idea when it first came out. It was supposed to be 2 bikes in one, a regular cruiser for city riding and a light touring bike for weekend trips. It had Harley's strong and trusted twin-cam 103 engine, which made 102 pound-feet of torque. That gave it enough power for smooth rides both in the city and out on the highway. What made it special was how you could quickly take off the hard saddlebags and windshield. 1 minute, it looked like a laid-back cruiser, and the next, it was ready for a longer trip. With a starting price of $16,499, it seemed like a great deal for riders who wanted one bike to do many things. This bike was made for people who didn't want to buy two different motorcycles. It gave riders the chance to go from weekday commuting to weekend adventures without needing something big and heavy like a road glide or electric glide. Harley also wanted it to be a next step for people moving up from smaller bikes. The Switchback was part of the Dyna family, known for good handling and solid performance. It even had the FLD name, which linked it to classic Harley touring bikes, giving it a bit of old-school charm. But even with all these good ideas, the Switchback had a hard time finding the right crowd. Some people thought it was trying to do too much and didn't do any of it really well. As a cruiser, when you took off the bags and windshield, it still looked bulky. Riders who loved the clean, simple look of bikes like the Street Bob or Lowrider felt the Switchback looked clunky in comparison. The big mounts for the saddlebags stuck out and made the back of the bike look awkward when it was in cruiser mode. And as a touring bike, it didn't have what long-distance riders wanted either. The saddlebags didn't hold much, and the passenger seat wasn't very comfortable for long trips. There was no built-in sound system, navigation, or strong wind protection like you'd get on a real touring Harley. The rear suspension also caused some problems. It was meant to balance between comfort and sporty riding, but many people said it felt too stiff and rough, especially on bumpy roads. That made longer rides uncomfortable, which is a big problem for any touring bike. Next up is a wild machine that looked like it came straight from a drag race, but ended up stalling out in showrooms because its design was just too much for most people. 4. Harley-Davidson FXDR 114. The Harley-Davidson FXDR 114 was built to look fast and mean. It had the powerful Milwaukee 8 114 engine that made 119 pound-feet of torque, making it one of the most powerful softail bikes you could buy at the time. Harley wanted this bike to stand out with its stretched-out body, giant rear tire, and sharp angles. It was made for riders who wanted something different and aggressive, something that screamed speed and strength. The FXDR came with some cool, high-performance parts. It had an aluminum swing arm, which made the rear lighter and helped the suspension work better. It also used aluminum for the rear frame and some parts of the body, helping keep the weight down. The forward foot controls and drag-style handlebars gave it a long, stretched riding posture. The 240mm rear tire was huge and gave it a bold look on the road. Everything about this bike said power cruiser, but all that muscle and style came with some real problems. A lot of Harley fans didn't like the modern, almost futuristic look. It didn't have the classic Harley curves or the relaxed riding feel that many cruiser fans love, and that forward-leaning riding position. It looked cool, but was really uncomfortable for a lot of riders. People often said their back, neck, and shoulders hurt after just a short ride. That made it hard to use the FXDR for anything other than short bursts or showing it off at a bike meet. Another issue was the price. It started at $18,999, which put it in the same price range as other premium bikes. But many buyers didn't think it offered enough comfort or everyday use for that kind of money. The wide rear tire also made low-speed turns harder, and the bike felt heavy and stiff when moving through traffic or tight spaces. It just didn't ride as well as it looked. And let's not forget the competition. Other brands offered strong muscle bikes too, like the Indian Scout Bobber or even the legendary Yamaha VMAX. Those bikes gave riders cool styling, good performance, and a more comfortable ride at times, all without the same kind of extreme compromises. 5. Harley-Davidson VRod. Instead of using their usual air-cooled engine, Harley worked with the famous car company Porsche to create something brand new. They came up with a powerful engine called the Revolution. It was liquid-cooled and had 60 degrees between the two cylinders. Later versions of the VRod made 120 horsepower and 84 pound-feet of torque, which was a lot more than most Harleys at the time. The VRod looked futuristic and fast, and Harley hoped it would bring in younger riders and even pull people away from other brands. The VRod stood out with some really different features. It had a strong aluminum frame that gave it a cool shape and made it more stable at high speeds. It came with drag-style handlebars and a huge rear tire that made it look like a powerful muscle bike. The bike was long, low, and bold. Harley even hid the gas tank under the seat to give it a smoother look. It was clearly trying to compete with performance bikes like the Yamaha VMAX or later on the Ducati Diavel. The VRod was fast. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 3.5 seconds, making it one of the fastest Harleys ever built. But while the VRod had high performance, it didn't feel like the Harley that longtime fans were used to. People who loved the loud, rough sound of air-cooled Harleys didn't enjoy the smoother, quieter sound of the VRod's engine. It just didn't give them the deep rumble they expected. Plus, its small 3.7-gallon gas tank meant it needed to stop for fuel more often, which was annoying for people who liked to go on long rides. The VRod wasn't cheap either. It usually cost around $17,100, which put it in the premium range. But it didn't fit easily into any one group. Riders who wanted sport bikes usually picked something lighter and quicker from another brand. Harley fans often stuck with classic cruiser styles they could customize more easily. So even though the VRod had great technology and strong power, it never became a top seller. People liked the idea of it, but didn't always want to buy it. 6. Harley-Davidson Pan America. This is a motorcycle category known for tough rides over dirt, gravel, and pavement where bikes have to handle everything. For years, brands like BMW, KTM, and Yamaha ruled this space. But Harley wanted in, so they made a brand new engine called the Revolution Max 1250. It made 150 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque. Very strong numbers for this type of bike. It was one of the most powerful adventure motorcycles right from the start. The special version of the Pan America came loaded with exciting new features. One of the most talked about was something called adaptive ride height. This system automatically lowered the bike when it came to a stop, so shorter riders could easily reach the ground. That made it more comfortable and less scary for a lot of people, especially on such a tall bike. The Pan America also had different ride modes for road, rain, sport, or off-road riding. It had a big 6.5-inch touchscreen with maps and phone connection, heated grips for cold weather, and a good suspension setup for bumpy trails. The price started at $17,319, which was close to other big adventure bikes. But even with all these features, a lot of people didn't trust Harley in this new space. Riders who loved adventure bikes were used to trusting brands like BMW or KTM, and Harley had no history in making bikes for this kind of riding. So people were nervous. Would the Pan America hold up on long trips or rough terrain? Would it be easy to fix if something went wrong far from home? Reviewers said the engine was strong and exciting, and they liked the seat-lowering system. But there were some problems too. Some riders thought the low-speed handling felt rough or awkward. Others ran into minor software glitches. And while some people liked the bold design, others didn't care for the unusual front-end look. In a class where function matters more than fashion, that was a problem. Also, many hardcore adventure riders were used to brands with long track records. They knew BMW and KTM bikes would have parts available worldwide. They also knew how to add luggage, racks, or GPS systems to those bikes easily. Harley didn't have that support yet, and that made people hesitate. Traditional Harley buyers also didn't show much interest, since adventure bikes were so different from what they were used to. Because of this, Harley dealers had trouble selling early Pan America models. It was a new idea from a company that had never done this before, and many riders just weren't ready to take the risk. Even though the bike had power and cool features, it sat on showroom floors longer than expected. Next comes the most surprising Harley of all. It wasn't made for dirt or drag racing. It was built for the future with no gas at all. But the price tag and the market reaction were truly shocking. 7. Harley-Davidson Livewire. The Harley-Davidson Livewire was one of the boldest moves the company ever made. It wasn't just another motorcycle. It was Harley's first try at making a fully electric bike, something no one expected from a brand known for loud, powerful V-twin engines. Packed with high-tech features and a sleek, modern design, the Livewire was meant to grab the attention of younger, tech-loving riders who cared about the planet and wanted speed without noise. But from the start, dealers had a hard time selling it. It didn't fit what most Harley customers were looking for. The Livewire used a special electric motor called the Revelation, and it was no joke. This motor made 105 horsepower and 86 pound-feet of torque instantly. No gears, no waiting. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3 seconds, which made it one of the fastest Harleys ever made. It had a city range of 146 miles and around 70 miles on the highway, depending on how you rode. That was enough for most city riders, but not great for long-distance trips. The bike came with high-end parts like shower suspension, cornering ABS, traction control, and a fancy 6-axis sensor system, features usually found on expensive European sport bikes. Still, for all its speed and high-tech parts, the biggest problem was the price. When the Livewire launched, it cost a shocking $29,799 in the US. That was more expensive than many of Harley's best gas bikes. Even after the price dropped to around $22,799, and Harley rebranded it under a new name, Livewire 1, it was still too expensive for most buyers. Meanwhile, other electric bike companies like Zero were offering similar bikes with longer range and lower prices. That made it hard for Harley to explain why someone should pay so much for the Livewire. There was another issue too, one that mattered a lot to longtime Harley fans. The Livewire didn't have that loud, growling Harley sound. It was almost silent, except for a soft gear whine. For riders who loved the deep rumble of a Harley V-twin, the Livewire just didn't feel right. On the other hand, the younger techie riders who might have liked the electric ride often didn't want to spend that much money, especially when they could get a cheaper electric bike or even a fast gas bike for less. And while the Livewire could charge quickly at special DC fast chargers, those stations still aren't everywhere, and charging still takes longer than pumping gas, making long trips harder. For dealers, the Livewire has been a big headache. Traditional Harley customers don't want an electric bike, and new riders who like EVs often say it costs too much. It's a high-tech machine with great performance, but it sits in showrooms without much interest. Dealers are now stuck with a bike that's hard to explain, tough to sell, and too expensive for most shoppers. That's why you might find a Livewire today at a serious discount, if a dealer is ready to move it and cut their losses. For someone who wants something different, fast, and quiet, this could be a great chance to buy a top-notch electric bike at a much lower price. Some were too bold, others just missed the mark. But for you, they're a rare deal. Which one would you rescue from the showroom? Like, subscribe, and ride safe and fast.